This is the Cromarty Firth in the Highlands of Scotland. Here you'll find cruise ships offloading passengers and oil rigs undergoing repair. It is one of those places that is buzzing with human activity, and in amongst all of this, there is an ecosystem that isn't doing so well. And we believe we can do something about it, which is why we're looking to do two things. We want to help bring back native oyster beds to clean the water, and restore seagrass meadows to create habitat for all kinds of different species.
This project's been brewing for about 9 months now, I think, so it's about time that we give you a proper update. And there is a lot to unpack, ranging from the little submarine thingy that we've been learning to use to map the seafloor, all the way to our first native oyster nursery that we want to set up in this bit of water right here. And yeah, I just think that this project it's so exciting. It's driven by the community, it's based on good science, but above all, it has a really big dream. It's a small intervention that's trying to transform a really, really large area.
For us, this story begins with Isla.
Hello. So, it's my first time of the year this year. What date is it? The 18th of February? If anyone ever accuses me of not being dedicated to my job, then please look at that temperature.
Isla joined our team at the end of last year as one of our biologists, and she immediately set about creating a marine project in her own style, which essentially means a proper community-led grassroots project. That is how she ended up meeting Frances, who is one of the founders of Moray Ocean Community, a group that started just a few months before. She joined the community group and they clicked really well and decided to set off on a mission to understand the problems in the area as well as what could be done about them. The area of focus is here, north of Inverness. And to get the ball rolling, they started by doing snorkel swims and intertidal surveys with the community to see what they could find. This involved many cold days in the water or stuck in the mud, and it led to the use of some interesting bits of kit.
So here I am going to try on the mudders, strap them onto my wellies and then go out into the mud and see how much better they are than not having them.
Despite looking funny, Frances's duck feet came in quite handy and improved the safety of the work in the mudflats. But they also help protect all sorts of sensitive habitats that could suffer with the trampling.
And if you look there, you can see the difference. On the right hand side, it's a lot deeper than that, and this is only really shallow mud, and imagine what it would happen in the really deep mud.
Community volunteers were the backbone of this work, and because of them, the surveys in the intertidal areas started ticking along nicely. However, it also became clear that it would be useful to map the subtidal areas, but it was really difficult to do so only with snorkeling surveys, which is why we decided to get our very own ROV.
Yeah, this is Nessie, and she's going to help us go places that we can't go.
Nessie is a little submersible remotely operated vehicle that has some lights and a camera, and essentially allows us to film the seabed down to about 200 meters of depth, which is, of course, a lot more than we need for this project. But even though it's a pretty useful bit of technology, it wasn't really love at first sight.
50 metres of cable that's sole purpose in life is to get knotted and twisted, you know, and you're being blown about by the wind, and then you got a small space anyway, and then you have a dog in the boat.
Doug, you're being blamed as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you get him looking miserable as sin, you know, and then you're trying to like untangle this 50 metres of cable that just wants to knot itself. We've not sworn at each other yet, though. Okay, right.
So what's lesson number 6 of ROV usage, Frances?
I can just sort the cables out before you do anything.
And I have to say that the initial clips that came through, well, I'll let the images speak for themselves.
Isla likes concentrating on the crabs. So you see the ROV.
Why do you like concentrating on crabs?
Because they come up to the ROV and they're like, what? Who? Why are there lights shining in my face? And then they just kind of walk off. It's funny. It's good.
Yeah, so there I am with my scientific hat on going, oh my God, there's a horse mussel. And the ROV just like turns and it like focuses on this crab that's like going, "Rrr." And I was like, it's a crab. It's like, yes, but I was actually interested in the horse mussel. It's like, oh my God.
But bit by bit, things got better, and the useful data started accumulating. Then, in addition to that, Isla also brought in Tiago, one of our other biologists, to help do some drone mapping. This is something that he's been working with quite a bit in our Cliff Plants project, where we use it to create baselines and also to find areas that have been overrun by invasives.
We've pre-programmed it to undertake a mission to map a section of the seagrass bed at a certain height. We're basically just testing out what is going to work best when it comes to how high a resolution we need to identify the seagrasses and show their distribution.
This is the resulting orthophoto mosaic that we built using the Pix4D software. And besides a bit of glare, it is perfect, and that means that we're able to survey really large areas over time. Now, if you're a regular Mossy Earth viewer, this should feel familiar to you, because we always like to have data before we do anything. But this time, our data gathering also involved digging into the past. We met with people like Hector, whose family has lived here for generations and who was able to share some very useful old photographs of all kinds of activity in the Firth, ranging from warships to fishing trawlers. We also spoke with Alan, who in the past farmed Pacific oysters in the Firth and had quite a bit of practical advice about setting up oyster nurseries, and with David from the Cromarty Courthouse Museum, who found some very interesting historical documents, such as these old interviews that mention oysters in the Cromarty, and this interesting notice warning people not to take any oysters between the Sutters of Cromarty, which are these things here, I believe, all the way west to Culliacudden, which is here. This is all really actionable historical data, and it quickly became clear to us that a bountiful oyster population once existed here, but that at some point they disappeared, because we can't seem to find them now.
We might never know when the last oyster disappeared from this Firth, and there might still be a few hiding in the corner somewhere, but what we do know is that there is something missing here. There should be a thriving native oyster reef in this Firth, which would support all kinds of different species just by being there. And we feel that that is something that gives us a clear signal, a clear direction to follow, and a project to implement.
Now, at this point, you might be wondering why we care so much about oysters and seagrass. So I think it's about time we take a look at these species and what we intend to do about each one. Let's start with seagrasses. The main species that we have here are common and dwarf eelgrass, as well as the related beaked tasselweed. And despite their names, they are often confused with seaweeds, like kelp, but they're actually plants. They have roots, shoots, leaves, and even flowers, and the similarities go further, because much like grass on land, seagrasses form these wonderful underwater meadows, which is why we consider them to be a foundational plant species, or an ecosystem engineer. You see, places like this provide structured habitat in areas that are often muddy and more barren, much like a town in the middle of the desert. And in addition to that, they're also food for herbivores, they produce oxygen and store carbon through photosynthesis, and they improve the water quality by filtering pollutants, absorbing excess nutrients from runoff, and trapping sediments. Now, we actually still have extensive seagrass beds left in the Cromarty, but in the Bewley, to the south, things look a bit worse. So at this stage, we've set ourselves two tasks. The first will be to map as much as possible using the drone, to cover a really wide area and create proper baselines that can be used by our projects, but also by anyone else who wants to do some restoration in the future. And then, the second task is more about past changes and long-term trends, and involves a bit more of an old-school approach. You see, the last time that seagrasses were properly surveyed in the project area was in 1986 by Fox, Yost, and Gilbert, and they have made this wonderfully detailed report. So we've decided to go ahead and repeat it with the volunteers from Moray Ocean Community. This will allow us to understand how things have changed in the last 30 years, And to make sure that we get comparable data, we'll be using the same survey methods that they used back in the day, as Isla and Francis actually managed to track down Diana Gilbert to learn more about how they did it. This will be a ton of work, but well worth our time. And already, our preliminary results seem to lean towards the need for some transplants and reintroductions here in the Moray Firth to the south, which is why Jeff, one of the volunteers, decided to give seagrass transplanting a try to understand the process a bit better. And he actually managed to get some of it growing in a small aquarium, which is always a good sign. But all of this is something for a future update when we have processed all the data and have a clear plan in place. Now, when it comes to oysters, we have a more active restoration approach in mind already, because they're completely gone from our project area. So now I think it's finally time for me to take you underwater to check out some oysters in their natural habitat.
So I'm here with Isla and Francis, and today we're going to be going underwater to look for an oyster reef. And the idea here is to essentially try to show you a little bit what our area might look like after we've restored it. And the reason I'm crouching down and pointing the camera down like a silly person is because unfortunately we don't want to disclose this location, because that is still a big danger for the oysters.
And before we got in the water, Francis found something quite exciting.
Native oysters prefer to settle down onto other shells, but this shows that there are oysters here that are actually breeding, and they are being able to settle out here. So I think this gives us hope that there are other places that we could actually start reintroducing these.
This was a great sign. So we got in the water, and Francis started his snorkel survey, while I set off to film the oysters. And I have to confess, I got very distracted. I found all sorts of super interesting sea life. There were these sea hares slowly making their way along the sea floor, hermit crabs going about their day, small fish lying on the bottom that seemed to be both curious and very scared at the same time. There were tons of beautiful green crabs doing all sorts of mischievous things, and then a few creatures that really mesmerized me, such as this beautiful trumpet fish that spent some time with me, and also this weird little creature. You might have to look closely here, but you can see it neatly camouflaged in the seaweed. I did not have time to identify all of this wonderful sea life, so I would love to hear your comments about the names of the different species that I just showed you, so that I can identify them in future dives. And after all of this, I finally focused on the task at hand and started filming these beautiful oysters. So this is Ostrea edulis. It is a bivalve mollusk, meaning that it has two hinged shells, and much like seagrasses, it also creates structured habitat by creating oyster reefs. Now, this here could at best be classed as a stage 1 reef in the good old oyster manual, but I still managed to see this clear example of hermit crabs hiding inside a dead oyster, which is a great way to show that these oysters form useful structure for other wildlife. In that way, it is quite similar to the seagrasses. However, it has an additional card up its sleeve. It's an incredible filter feeder, which means that it draws water over its gills to extract small food particles, and in the process, it cleans the water. This video from the University of Hong Kong is incredible because you can see this with your own eyes. Each oyster filters around 200 liters of water every day, and in the long run, a large oyster bed can significantly improve water clarity. And this allows other species, such as the seagrasses and the kelps, to thrive with the increased sunlight. This means that oysters are not only an ecosystem engineer, like the seagrasses, but also a keystone species that has an outsized impact on the ecosystem. So at this point, I hope it is clear why we love oysters so much and why we want to bring them back. And to do so properly, we've put aside around £95,000 of our membership budget to be spent in 2023 and 2024 on some trial projects. And as a reminder, this money essentially comes from people like you who watch these videos and decide to support our projects. It literally takes thousands of members to be able to put these projects together, so we need every single small contribution, which is why our membership starts at just £5. So if that sounds interesting to you, then be sure to check out our channel trailer here on YouTube. It explains everything in a bit more depth. and also to visit our website at mossy.earth. Okay, so back to the oysters now, and to kickstart the regeneration process, we will begin with 2 tests. For the first one, we will be setting up a small-scale survivability trial with Andrew, who is a blue mussel farmer in the Cromarty. We will hopefully be putting some oysters on one of his lines so that we can see how well they do in this part of the Firth. This will be useful data to inform a potential future reintroduction. And to ensure that we know what is going on, we also deployed a data logger that will record the salinity and temperature of the water at every hour. And then there is the idea to start our very own oyster nursery.
We've been told that this area used to be the launch site of the Allness ferry that essentially connected both sides of the Firth. But of course, in the meantime, a bridge has been built back there and it has been discontinued. But for us, it's still a very useful location because there's a road coming down all the way to the water. The owner of this field will possibly allow us to store some gear there, which would make things even easier. And this is a really suitable area for us to set up a oyster nursery.
The plans for this are currently in pre-application stage, so it's still early days, but we got the process started and hope to get it done in the first half of 2024 if all goes well. The setup will be quite simple. We'll have an anchor on each end with a long bit of strong rope between them. We will then attach floats to the rope so that it is close to the surface and suspend 150 oyster baskets from the rope. We've decided to grow them this way because, to begin with, we want them to be safe from predators like crabs, starfish, and dog whelks. This will also allow them to grow to a size suitable to be used for the actual reintroductions, that is, after we get the necessary licenses, of course. And then we need a boat to work on this nursery and also to do more surveying, as Francis's boat, well, it has its limitations. We found a local boat builder, which is pretty cool, and he has quoted us around £20,000 to get it built. As you can see, the boat will be quite simple, but more than enough for what we need. This is all a bit of a recent plan that came after we'd already assigned the membership budget, so we're looking to raise some additional budget specifically for this boat purchase. So, if you're already a member and you like this project, you'll now be able to fund the boat purchase in your account in the Fund Extra tab. We'll put the actual price on there when we have it and accept contributions until the boat is paid for.
That is the plan, that we'll have our boat set out there. The long line will be just literally probably 200 metres up the coast. Yeah, once a week come out, pull out the oysters in their cages, check them, clean them.
And this boat needs a name, as it will be an official workboat. So please let us know your best ideas in the comments, and we will put up a poll later with the top voted names.
And the other problem is that sometimes you have to use the phonetic alphabet if somebody doesn't understand the name. And it took me days and days and days to learn the phonetic alphabet. So as long as it's a short name that I know the alphabet of.
Can you spell my name in the phonetic alphabet?
India, Sierra, Alpha. No, how do you spell it? Isla. I-S-L-A-Y.
I don't have a Y at the end.
You don't have a Y at the end?
My parents were kind to me.
Oh, okay, that's all right then. Now that. Well, I-S-L-A.
I'm sorry, Francis. I'm so sorry.
It's all right.
Isla and Francis can truly have a good laugh together, but all jokes aside, they're a formidable team that has achieved quite a bit in very little time and is very serious about doing things properly and setting up this project with a solid foundation. And this is why we're also taking on Francis part-time, to allow him to dedicate even more time to this great opportunity to make an impact.
I think this project is exactly the kind of stuff that we want to be doing at Mossy Earth, because it's being led by Isla and Francis, who are a part of the local community. It's data-driven and scientific in its thinking, and it's dreaming really big to try to make a big change to a degraded ecosystem. So I'm really excited to see where this is going, and I'm above all excited that we have the ability to support this project in the long run. And that is all thanks to our Mossy Earth members, like I've said many times. So again, a huge thank you to everyone who's made this project possible. And if you're not yet a member, then be sure to check out mossy.earth to fund this project and many more projects like it. Until next time. Cheers!
Oh my god, I'm crying.
So Isla is seriously it's ISLA.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. India Sierra Lima Alpha.
There you go.